The guests were still cheering, "Congratulations," when John Cole tore the smile off his pregnant wife's face. 8 months along, glowing under the pink balloons of her baby shower, Emma Cole held a gift box until her husband snatched the microphone. "I'm done pretending," he said loudly, voice echoing through the hall. "I'm divorcing you, Emma, right here, right now." Gasps filled the room. The same crowd that came to celebrate new life now watched a woman's world collapse. John tossed a folder of divorce papers onto the cake table. Frosting splattered across her white dress. His parents stood behind him, proud and silent, the same parents who'd worked for years at Grant Industries, the company that secretly belonged to the woman he was destroying. "Sign it," he sneered. "You'll never be more than a poor burden." Her hands trembled. The lights dimmed. And as the room spun, no one saw the sealed envelope in her purse, the one her late godfather left her, containing the truth about who really owned the empire her husband worshipped. He thought he was divorcing a poor wife after her baby shower. He didn't know he was handing power back to the woman who owned the company his parents worked for. So when the truth surfaces, who will end up begging for forgiveness? This is the story of how a husband divorced his poor wife after her baby shower, unaware she owns the company his parents worked for. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The music stopped the moment John Cole slammed his hand on the gift table. Glasses rattled. Balloons trembled. The sound was sharp enough to silence the entire room. 8 months pregnant, Emma Cole froze where she stood, her trembling hands, still holding a ribbon-wrapped present from their neighbor, Karen Lewis. The guests stared, half smiling, half confused, expecting a toast. John's jaw tightened. His sharp gray suit glistened under the chandelier. "I can't do this anymore," he said, voice cutting through the hum of soft jazz. "I can't keep living a lie." His mother, Marla Cole, whispered, "John, not here." But he didn't stop. Emma blinked. "What are you talking about?" John's hand shot into his jacket pocket. He pulled out an envelope and threw it onto the cake table. The sound was small but cruel, like a gavel hitting wood. "Sign this," he said. "You're no longer my wife." Gasps filled the air. Someone dropped a glass. Lydia Reese, the event planner, and John's friend, bit her lip to hide a smile. Emma's breath caught. You're divorcing me? Here? In front of everyone?" John's voice rose. "You think I'll keep pretending? You lost your boutique. You've embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. You're nothing but dead weight." The guests exchanged uneasy glances. Karen Lewis whispered to her husband, "This is cruel." Peter Cole, John's father, folded his arms. "Son, maybe later." "No!" John snapped. "She's been living off me. She's poor, useless. This marriage is over." Lydia placed a manicured hand on his shoulder. "Maybe you should calm down, John." Her perfume drifted across the table, sweet and poisonous. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Her fingers traced the envelope's edge, cold and smooth. Inside was her humiliation printed in ink, divorce papers, at her baby shower. The crowd murmured. Words like betrayal, public humiliation, and failed business floated in whispers. Emma's voice cracked. "I carried your child, John. I worked like a slave to help you build your dreams." John scoffed. "And now you'll carry my shame too." The slap of those words stung, more than any physical blow. Emma's body swayed slightly. Karen Lewis stepped forward, trying to hold her steady, but Emma lifted her hand to stop her. "Don't," Emma said quietly. "If he wants to throw me away, let him." For a long, painful second, there was silence. Only the hum of the chandelier filled the room. Then Emma placed her trembling hand over her stomach. "You'll regret this one day, John, when you realize what you just destroyed." John laughed, cold and confident. "You have nothing left for me to regret." Emma turned toward the door. Barefoot now, her shoes left somewhere near the cake table. The crowd parted like water. watching her leave with the papers clutched to her chest. Outside, the night air bit at her skin. The street was quiet, but a light still burned in the distance from the office of Walter Grant, her late godfather's old friend. And in her purse, a small sealed envelope waited, one she had forgotten completely, marked, "For Emma, on the day she's betrayed." Outside, the night air bit at her skin. The street was quiet, but a light still burned in the distance from the office of Walter Grant. The door slammed so hard the echo ran through the night. John Cole's voice followed behind it, sharp, cruel, final. "Don't come back, Emma. You wanted independence? Go live with your failure." The porch light flickered. 8 months pregnant, Emma Cole stood barefoot, clutching the divorce papers to her chest. The wind bit at her hair. Behind the curtain, she could see shadows, John's parents, Peter and Marla Cole, watching but not moving. Marla's voice came muffled through the window. "You brought this on yourself. You should have made him proud," Peter added quietly. "A man needs a woman who can keep up with his world." Emma didn't answer. Her throat was dry, her eyes burned, but she wouldn't cry for an audience. A car horn blared. Lydia Reese, in her black sedan, lowered the SAST window. "Took you long enough," she said, her voice full of mockery. "You should have left when your little shop collapsed." Emma's fingers trembled. "Does humiliating me make you feel strong, Lydia?" Lydia smirked. "No, sweetheart. Being chosen over you does." Then, she pressed the gas and disappeared into the street. The silence that followed was heavy, cruel and cold. Neighbors whispered from their porches, voices carrying through the wind. "Married to her own burden," one said. "She's nothing but debt and shame," another added. Someone else muttered, "He's a man of status. She should have known her place." The street outside was empty, but the sound of gossip filled it like smoke. Emma bent down, picking up the single gift left behind, a soft blanket embroidered with her baby's name. The tears finally came, slow and quiet. Inside her mind, her father's voice returned words he'd told her years ago. "Hard work never fails, but love without respect destroys." She took a deep breath, placed her hand on her belly, and whispered, "We're not broken, just forgotten." The reflection hit like a wave. How many times had she begged him to listen? How many nights had she stayed awake praying he'd see her worth? Every insult, every cold dinner, every gaslighting moment flashed like lightning through her memory. He'd said she was lazy when she was running 2 jobs. He'd called her ungrateful when she bought groceries with her last savings. And when her small clothing shop failed, he'd told her, "Failure is all you'll ever be." Her legs trembled. She sat on the curb, her back against the wall of the home she built with him. Dust clung to her cheeks as headlights passed and faded. Then a pair of footsteps approached. Karen Lewis, the neighbor, wrapped a coat around her shoulders. "Emma, please, come inside. You shouldn't be out here in your condition." Emma shook her head slowly. "If I walk back in there, I lose the last piece of myself." Karen's eyes softened. "Then at least take this." She handed her a small flashlight. "It's dark ahead." Emma looked down the long road where Lydia's car had vanished. A faint light still burned miles away, an office window she recognized from the nights her late godfather Walter Grant worked late. The wind carried a whisper, or maybe it was her memory. "When you are betrayed, open the letter." She reached into her purse. Her hand brushed against a sealed envelope. The name on it glowed faintly under the flashlight beam. "To Emma, for the day he betrays you." Her breath caught. She didn't open it yet. Not tonight. But her eyes lifted toward that burning light far away, and her voice cracked softly through the wind. "Maybe that's where the truth begins." A faint light still burned miles away, an office window she recognized from the nights her late godfather Walter Grant worked late. The morning headlines hit like a slap. Front pages screamed, "Businessman John Cole divorces wife during baby shower." Photos of Emma Cole, teary-eyed and barefoot, were everywhere. The comments online were worse. "She married up. He deserves better. Who throws a baby shower for failure?" Inside his downtown office, John Cole leaned back in his leather chair, scrolling through the coverage with a grin. "They're talking about me." he said proudly. Across from him, Lydia Reese, dressed in a tight red suit, crossed her legs and smiled. They're laughing at her, John. That's what you wanted, right? Marcus Bennett, his publicist, nodded while flipping through tabloids. You'll look sympathetic if you say you were trapped in a toxic marriage. Olivia Frost, and his PR strategist, chimed in. We'll leak that her failed boutique drained your savings. Troy Miller, his business partner, smirked. Perception is profit, my friend. John's jaw tightened with pride. Good. Let the world see I was a man saving himself from dead weight. At that exact moment, Emma, still recovering at Karen Lewis's small guest room, stared at the same headlines from an old phone. Her trembling hands brushed the article showing Lydia by John's side, captioned, Business partner supports CEO through difficult time. Emma whispered to herself. So she was there, even before the end. Karen placed a cup of warm tea beside her. You don't need to read that poison, honey. Emma shook her head slowly. I need to see what I'm up against. Karen sighed. You're not up against them, Emma. You're just trying to survive. Emma's eyes hardened. No, Karen. I'm trying to remember who I was before he erased me. Meanwhile, back in the office, Lydia leaned closer to John, whispering, Once the divorce finalizes, we'll be unstoppable. Investors trust strength, not sympathy. Marcus laughed. A man who drops a failure always wins headlines. John smirked. Exactly. She'll fade into silence, like she always did. But from the glass wall behind him, an older man's reflection appeared. Walter Grant, wearing his usual dark coat, standing at the entrance. Funny, Walter said calmly, stepping inside. You talk about silence as if it belongs to you. John blinked. Mr. Grant, what are you doing here? Walter's tone was steady, like ice. I came to check on my company, but it seems you're too busy celebrating cruelty. Lydia's smile faltered. Excuse me, sir. This is a private meeting. Walter's eyes narrowed. I built Grant Industries on ethics, and you, John, should remember whose name sits on your contracts. John straightened in his chair. You don't own me, old man. Walter smirked faintly. No, but I own the roof over your parents' heads. Silence filled the office. Lydia looked nervous for the first time. Marcus stopped pretending to check his heads. Phone. Walter turned toward the door. When arrogance speaks too loud, truth tends to whisper from the walls. Back at Karen's house, Emma's phone buzzed a new message from an unknown number. If you're ready to know the truth, come to the Grant building tonight. She stared at the text, heartbeat quickening. Outside the window, the night sky glowed red, just like the one she'd stood under when John threw her out. If you're ready to know the truth, come to the Grant building tonight. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us where are you watching from, and what part of this story spoke to your heart. The elevator doors opened with a metallic hiss. Emma Cole, 8 months pregnant and exhausted, stepped into the dimly lit lobby of Grant Industries. The security guard looked up, startled. Ma'am, visiting hours ended. I got a message, she said, voice trembling but firm. From Walter Grant. He hesitated. Then, with quiet respect, he nodded. He's on the top floor. The ride up felt endless. Her reflection in the elevator glass looked like a stranger, swollen eyes, cracked lips, a woman humiliated in front of the world yet still standing. She whispered to herself, if this is the end, at least I'll face it standing. When the doors slid open, she found Walter's office lit by a single lamp. Papers covered the mahogany desk, and beside it an envelope identical to the one in her purse. Then she saw him, Walter Grant, frail but composed, standing by the window, overlooking the city. His silver hair shimmered under the faint light. I was wondering when you'd come, he said softly. Emma's voice broke. Why did you send that message? What truth am I supposed to know? Walter turned. The truth your husband mocks you for hiding in failure, your inheritance clause, your mother's legacy. She blinked, confused. My mother's legacy? My mother died poor, Walter. He smiled sadly. That's what she wanted you to believe. To protect you. He motioned for her to sit. His assistant, Miss Clara Dunn, brought a file marked Confidential Trust. Walter continued. Before your mother died, she transferred her shares to my care under your maiden name. The public never knew. Not even your husband. Emma stared at the documents, legal signatures, bank seals, property deeds. I don't understand. Walter leaned closer. Emma, you are the silent majority shareholder of this company. Your mother founded it with me 30 years ago. You own more than anyone else, including John's parents. The room spun. You mean, my in-laws? They work for me? Walter nodded. Irony writes its own justice, my dear. Miss Dunn placed another envelope on the desk. Mr. Grant prepared this letter before he fell ill. Emma opened it slowly. The words blurred through her tears. My dear Emma, when betrayal arrives, open this, and remember, wealth attracts shadows, but truth gives light. Use this not for vengeance, but for good. She pressed her hand against her chest. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Walter's expression softened. Because strength is not inherited, it's revealed in pain. Outside, thunder rumbled. The night sky glowed red, just like the one from the night she was cast out. Emma exhaled shakily. Then I won't waste it. I'll use what she left me to rebuild, not destroy. Walter smiled faintly. Then your mother would be proud. He coughed violently, his hand trembling. Miss Dunn rushed forward. Sir, please. But Walter waved her off. I'll be fine. He wasn't. As Emma stood to leave, she turned one last time and saw him collapse behind the desk. Walter! She screamed, running to his side. His eyes fluttered open. Emma! The vault key! Bottom drawer! His voice faded into silence. Her shaking hands reached for the drawer. Inside lay a small brass key with her name engraved. Her reflection in the polished surface stared back, no longer a victim, but a woman standing at the edge of revelation. Her shaking hands reached for the drawer. Inside lay a small brass key with her name engraved. The sound of Walter Grant's collapse still echoed in the glass-walled office. Walter! Emma Cole dropped to her knees beside him, her 8-month belly pressing painfully against the carpet. Miss Clara Dunn, trembling, rushed to call the emergency line. Stay with me, please, Emma begged, pressing her hands to his chest. You can't leave me now, you just showed me who I am. Walter's breathing was shallow. His trembling fingers reached for her hand, eyes cloudy but calm. Listen, the world will test you harder than he ever did, but you mustn't let bitterness lead you. Don't talk like that, she cried. He smiled faintly. The vault key will show you everything your mother built. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Clara Dunn pressed a handkerchief to his lips, whispering, Hold on, sir. Help is coming. But Walter's voice weakened into a whisper. Emma, promise me. Use it not for vengeance, but for good. Then silence. The air turned still, heavy with loss. The city lights flickered through the window, washing the room in gold and gray. Emma's tears fell onto his still hand. She whispered through trembling lips, I promise. Hours later, the paramedics had gone. The office was cold, empty except for Emma, Clara, and the faint hum in the city below. Clara handed her a small sealed envelope Walter had left in his drawer. He wrote this months ago, she said softly. Emma opened it slowly. The handwriting was uneven but strong. My dear Emma, the vault beneath this building holds your mother's final trust, documents, properties, and investments hidden from greed. They were meant to be yours once you found your strength. Let truth lead you, not revenge. Love, Walter. Her eyes burned as she read. He knew I'd fall before I could rise. Clara nodded. He saw your mother's fire in you. And now, it's time for you to stand. Emma stood slowly, clutching the brass key from the last scene. It gleamed faintly in her palm, catching the reflection of the city skyline. She whispered, "I lost everything because I believed I was nothing, but not anymore." Clara placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "He believed in you more than anyone, Emma. You can't let that die here." Emma wiped her tears. "I won't. He built something worth saving, and I'll finish what he started." From the hallway, a janitor paused, hat in hand. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "Mr. Grant always said the woman in the photo was the heart of this company." Emma turned toward the wall, an old portrait of her late mother, smiling beside a younger Walter. Her heart broke all over again. She was more than I ever knew. The elevator dinged softly behind them. A man in a gray suit stepped out, Daniel Price, Grant Industries' chief accountant. He looked startled seeing her there. "Mrs. Cole? What are you doing here this late?" Emma straightened. "I think it's time I learn what I own." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She lifted the brass key slightly. "I'm opening the vault. I'm opening the vault." The vault door groaned as Emma Cole turned the brass key. It wasn't the kind of sound money made, it was the kind truth made when it came alive. Daniel Price, the company accountant, stood behind her, his voice low and uncertain. "Are you sure you want to do this? No one's opened this room since your mother's time." "I have to," Emma said, pressing her hand against the metal. "It's the only way to understand what she and Walter died protecting." The heavy lock clicked. A gust of cold air and dust rushed out, carrying the scent of old paper and secrets. Inside were rows of boxes, each labeled with dates and names she didn't yet recognize. Daniel switched on a flashlight. The beam landed on a file marked Helena Trust Confidential Assets. "Helena," Emma whispered, remembering her mother's middle name. That was her code for anything she wanted hidden. She reached out, her fingers trembling. Inside were signed deeds, property titles, and share certificates, hundreds of them, all linked to Grant Industries subsidiaries. Daniel's eyes widened. "These are worth hundreds of millions. This changes everything." Emma's voice cracked. "And she left it all. For me." Daniel looked at her carefully. "Then the company is yours completely. But if John finds out," her face hardened. "He won't. Not until I'm ready." She sat on the concrete floor, pulling out an old leather-bound notebook from the bottom of a crate. The cover bore her mother's initials, H.G.C. Inside, written in faded ink. "If you're reading this, my daughter, you've faced the same cruelty I once did. Remember, forgiveness with dignity is stronger than vengeance. Use this empire not to destroy, but to rebuild." Tears slid down her cheeks. "You knew this would happen, didn't you, Mama?" she whispered. Daniel lowered his gaze respectfully. "Your mother built this from nothing. She believed women like her and you could survive anything." The silence grew deep, filled only with the hum of distant machinery. Emma pressed her hand on her belly, feeling her baby kick. "Maybe this was never about revenge," she said softly. "Maybe it's about legacy." Daniel gave a small smile. "Then let's protect it. But you'll need a lawyer, someone discreet." "I already have one," Emma said, remembering Miss Clara Dunn's promise. Walter trained her. They began sealing the boxes again, cataloging every document. On one side of the vault was a metal chest engraved with the word evidence. Daniel frowned. "What's this?" Emma wiped the dust away and froze. Inside were photos of John Cole, Lydia, and bank transfer slips tied to his company name. Her voice was barely a whisper. He was stealing from Grant Industries even before the divorce. Daniel stepped back. "This is corporate fraud. If this leaks, his career is over." Emma exhaled, steady and cold. "Not yet. I'll expose him when the time is right." As they walked out, Emma locked the vault again, the echo of the metal door slamming, sealing her transformation. She looked at Daniel and said quietly, "The world saw me fall. Now they'll watch me rise." Outside the building, the morning sun broke through gray clouds. Reporters were already gathering downstairs, still gossiping about her humiliation. But this time, she didn't flinch. She lifted her chin and whispered, You called me a failure, John. Let's see who fails next. Her phone buzzed an unknown number again. The message read, he just announced a new contract worth $200 million with your company. Emma's eyes darkened. Then the real story begins now. He just announced a new contract worth $200 million with your company. The conference room exploded with applause. John Cole, polished in a navy suit, shook hands with executives and cameras flashing from every corner. This is history, his partner Troy Miller said proudly. A $200 million contract signed with Grant Industries. You've officially entered the big leagues, John. John grinned, arrogance dripping from his voice. To a future built on power and the right company at my side. Beside him, Lydia Reese smiled for the photographers, her diamond bracelet catching the light. To new beginnings, she purred. The cameras clicked. Journalists shouted questions. Mr. Cole, any regrets about your divorce? John laughed, waving them off. Regret? Only that I didn't do it sooner. Across the city, Emma Cole watched the broadcast on a small TV inside Miss Clara Dunn's office. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes told a different story. Grant Industries, Clara said quietly. That's your company. He just signed a contract with you. Emma nodded, her hand resting on her belly. He thinks he's rising. He's actually walking into my hands. Daniel Price, sitting across the desk, slid a folder toward her. The terms of that contract favor you entirely. He didn't even read the fine print. Emma opened the document pages lined with legal clauses, financial disclosures, and one hidden inheritance signature she recognized. Walter's old pen mark. Clara smiled faintly. He made you the silent owner years ago. That contract automatically channels 40% of his profit back into your trust. Daniel added. If he defaults, his company assets go to Grant Industries, meaning you. Emma's voice was calm, but her words cut sharp. Then the man who called me a burden just sold his pride to me. Meanwhile, John celebrated at a rooftop bar with Lydia, Marcus, and Olivia. To Emma's failure, Lydia toasted. To power, Marcus replied. To money, John finished, clinking glasses. But the celebration dimmed when Peter Cole, John's father, arrived uninvited, face grim. Son, he said, lowering his voice, do you know who runs Grant Industries now? John scoffed. Some board of suits. Why? Peter exhaled. There's talk the majority shareholder changed after Walter Grant died. John's laughter faltered. So? Peter's tone hardened. So if you've tied your name to the wrong hands, this contract could ruin you. Lydia rolled her eyes. You worry too much, Peter. Business is business. Peter glared. You think power has no memory? The world doesn't forget arrogance. John brushed it off, but a flicker of unease crossed his face. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Back at Clara's office, Emma folded the contract gently and placed it in a folder marked Confidential. She looked out the window at the city skyline, the sun setting like molten gold over the towers. This isn't revenge, she whispered. This is balance. Clara nodded. And balance requires patience. Emma turned toward her allies. Then patience is what he'll get. Her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. He's hosting a gala next week to celebrate the contract. Media will be there. Emma's lips curved into a quiet, dangerous smile. Then next week, she said softly, he'll meet the new face of Grant Industries. Then next week, she said softly, he'll meet the new face of Grant Industries. The marble floor gleamed under golden chandeliers. Cameras flashed. The city's elite filled the grand ballroom of the Astoria Hall, where John Cole's gala for the $200 million contract was about to begin. He stood at the center of the stage, his arm proudly around Lydia Reese, both dressed in shimmering confidence. To new beginnings, he announced, raising a glass. To the power of partnership and the victory of vision. The crowd applauded. Marcus Bennett leaned toward Olivia Frost, whispering, he's really enjoying his own spotlight. Olivia smirked. He thinks the world forgave him. Marcus replied under his breath, the world just loves a show. As the applause continued, The doors at the back of the hall opened. A hush fell. Every head turned. There, in a gown of pure, white silk, stood Emma Cole, radiant, composed, and impossibly calm. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "She came?" someone whispered. Lydia's face paled. "What is she doing here?" John's jaw tightened. "Ignore her. She's here to embarrass herself." Emma walked forward slowly, the lights catching the silver thread of her dress. The reporters swarmed instantly. "Mrs. Cole, first public appearance since the divorce. How does it feel to see your ex-husband's success?" Emma smiled softly. "Success can be measured in many ways. Tonight, I'm just here to celebrate new beginnings." The words hung heavy. Karen Lewis, watching from the side of the room, whispered to Miss Clara Dunn, "She's not just walking in, she's reclaiming the room." Clara nodded. "And she knows exactly when to strike." John forced a smile, taking the microphone again. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure we're all surprised to see Emma here tonight. But let's focus on what matters, our record-breaking deal with Grant Industries." The crowd clapped politely, tension humming beneath every breath. Emma's voice rose gently from below the stage. "Yes, let's focus on that. John, the deal with Grant Industries." He blinked. "Excuse me?" Emma stepped closer, her calm gaze fixed on him. "Because as of Walter Grant's passing, I represent that company." The hall went silent. John's confident grin faltered. "You represent them?" Emma nodded, eyes unflinching. "As majority shareholder and acting chairwoman, yes. So technically, John, this gala celebrates my company's success." Cameras exploded in flashes. Gasps swept through the guests. Marcus coughed nervously. Olivia muttered, "This can't be real." Lydia's voice trembled. "She's bluffing. Right, John?" Emma turned to her, smile thin as glass. "You were always good at pretending, Lydia. But not tonight." John's father, Peter Cole, stepped forward, his voice hoarse. "Emma, is this true?" Emma faced him squarely. "Every contract your son signed, every dollar he bragged about, it all leads back to me." The room erupted in chaotic whispers. Reporters shouted questions. Lydia staggered back. John stood frozen, his glass shattering in his hand. Emma's tone softened, quiet but commanding. "You called me poor, John. You built your name on my foundation. But now, I think it's time the truth paid you a visit." She turned and began to walk away as the crowd parted for her. Cameras followed her every step, light flashing like judgment. Behind her, John's furious voice cracked through the noise. "You'll regret this, Emma." She paused at the doorway, looked back once, and said softly, "No, John, for once you will." Outside, the night air shimmered. The city lights reflected off the car window as she stepped in. Her phone buzzed a message from Daniel. "We found the forged invoices. Fraud cases ready." Emma's calm lips curved into a knowing smile. Then the next chapter begins. "We found the forged invoices. Fraud cases ready." The gavel struck wood, echoing through the packed courtroom. "Case number 1107, Cole versus Grant Industries," the clerk announced. "Allegations of fraud, forged invoices, and embezzlement under review." The audience leaned forward. Reporters whispered. Cameras flashed. Pens hovered above notepads. At the defendant's table sat John Cole, pale, fidgeting with his cufflinks. Lydia Reese sat beside him, eyes darting nervously. Across from them, calm as ever, sat Emma Cole, her belly showing the last weeks of pregnancy. Her hands rested quietly over a folder of evidence. "Ready for justice?" whispered Miss Clara Dunn, her loyal lawyer. Emma nodded, voice steady. "I'm ready for truth." The judge, Harold Myers, adjusted his glasses. "Counsel, proceed." Clara stood, her tone crisp. "Your Honor, the defendant knowingly redirected funds from Grant Industries trust accounts into his personal company, disguising the transfers under fake vendor names. We have documented proof." She motioned to Daniel Price, who rose from the gallery, holding up the forensic report. "These are the forged invoices Your Honor, everyone signed by Mr. Cole. Gasps filled the room. John shot up. That's a lie. My signature was duplicated. Clara's calm eyes didn't flinch. Then explain the bank transfers made from your personal device. The clerk projected the data onto the screen, John's account number, Lydia's email authorization, and transaction timestamps. Lydia's face drained of color. John, you told me these were bonuses. He turned on her sharply. Shut up. The crowd erupted in murmurs and whispers, a public spectacle unraveling live. The judge pounded the gavel. Order, Mr. Cole. You will respect this court. Emma rose slowly, turning to face her husband. You always said I was a burden, John. You said I had nothing. But I built the very empire you stole from. Her voice didn't tremble. It carried through every corner of the courtroom like a hymn of reckoning. Lydia covered her face, whispering, This can't be happening. John's mother, Marla Cole, in the back row, muttered under her breath, She's destroying us. But Peter Cole, beside her, said quietly, No, she's showing us who we raised. The judge looked at John. Do you deny transferring funds? John's arrogance cracked. It was business, just business. Clara responded firmly. Then business has consequences. The judge leaned forward. I'll issue my ruling after recess. But based on the evidence, I strongly advise a settlement discussion. John sank into his chair, defeated. His lawyers whispered frantically. Lydia slipped off her bracelet, sliding it into her purse like guilt itself. Emma gathered her documents, rising with quiet dignity. She looked at John one last time. You taught me to fight dirty, she said softly. Walter taught me to fight fair. And fairness always wins. As she walked toward the exit, the crowd stood, not in mockery this time, but in respect. Reporters' cameras flashed, not as weapons, but as witnesses. Outside, under the courthouse steps, Daniel handed her an envelope. Walter planned one final reveal for after the verdict, he said. Emma's brows furrowed. Reveal of what? Daniel's expression was grim. Of who really forged the last document. It wasn't just John. Emma's breath hitched. Then who? Daniel hesitated. Someone inside your own circle. The camera of the world turned once more toward a truth even she wasn't ready for. Walter planned one final reveal for after the verdict. Someone inside your own circle. The storm broke. Before dawn, Emma Cole stood at the tall glass window of Grant Industries, staring at the rain streaking down the skyline. Behind her, Daniel Price placed a sealed folder on her desk. This is the file Walter left, he said quietly. The one he said would explain the final piece. Emma turned, her eyes cautious. You said someone close to me helped John. Daniel nodded, his voice heavy. The evidence confirms it. Every leak strategy, every meeting location, you were never alone in that betrayal. She opened the folder slowly. The first page was stamped confidential, internal communications leak. Beneath it, emails, meeting notes, and a signature she knew too well. Miss Clara Dunn. Emma's heart clenched. No, that's not possible. Daniel sighed. She gave him updates during the contract phase. Maybe she didn't mean to, but the money trail is clear. The thunder outside roared like a warning. Miss Clara Dunn, her most trusted ally, entered the room just then, holding a warm cup of tea. You look pale, Emma. Did you sleep at all? Emma didn't answer immediately. She stared at the disciple woman who had guided her through every battle. Clara, she said softly, when you told me to trust no one, did that include you? Clara froze mid-step. What are you talking about? Daniel placed the open file between them. Maybe you should tell her before she finds out from the court. Clara's face drained of color. You went through Walter's files? Emma's voice trembled not with weakness, but with wounded disbelief. He kept them to protect me, and now I see why. Clara took a deep breath, lowering her gaze. John offered me something I couldn't refuse: forgiveness for my brother's debt. I never meant for it to go this far. Emma's voice broke. You sold my trust for money? Clara stepped closer, pleading. I told him nothing that could destroy you. I thought I could control him, but he twisted everything. Daniel snapped. You nearly cost her the entire inheritance. The silence that followed was crushing. Emma walked slowly to the desk and picked up the letter Walter had left, the one that said, "Use it not for vengeance, but for good," she whispered. I thought betrayal couldn't surprise me anymore. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I'll fix it. I'll testify against him now. Emma looked up, her eyes cold but calm. No, Clara. You won't fix it, you'll face it. She pressed a button on her phone. 2 security officers entered. Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. Miss Dunn, you're under internal investigation for breach of trust. Clara's sobs echoed as they let her out. The rain outside grew louder, flooding the city streets like the weight of truth itself. Emma sank into her chair, breathing shallow. Even light cast shadows. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You still have Walter's vision and a company that believes in you. Emma nodded weakly. Then we rebuild. Cleaner this time. Her phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. Check tomorrow's headline. John's empire just collapsed. Emma's eyes widened. Collapsed? How? Daniel frowned. It's not from me. The screen blinked once before the message vanished completely. Outside, lightning flashed over the skyscrapers, a storm brewing, not of rain, but of revenge and revelation. Check tomorrow's headline. John's empire just collapsed. The news broke at sunrise. Breaking report. Tech CEO John Cole's empire collapses overnight following embezzlement findings and shareholder withdrawals. The anchor announced live on television. Emma Cole stood frozen in her office, the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes. Her phone buzzed non-stop calls from journalists, messages from board members, and even old acquaintances who had once mocked her silence. Grant Industries stock rises by 14%, said Daniel Price, scanning his tablet. John's company, Cole Innovations, is officially bankrupt. He turned to her. You didn't have to lift a finger. The system turned on him. Emma exhaled slowly. No, Daniel. It wasn't the system. It was truth, doing what truth does eventually surface. The phone rang again. Daniel answered, voice sharp. Who is this? The line crackled. A trembling voice replied, It's Lydia Reese. Please, I need to speak to Emma. Daniel's brow furrowed. Why would she call now? Emma gestured for the phone. Let her through. A moment later, Lydia's voice echoed through the speaker, shaky, panicked. He's losing everything. He's blaming me for it all. He's tearing the house apart. Please, he's not himself. Emma's tone remained calm. You mean the house I once built? Lydia hesitated. I didn't know it would end like this. I thought he loved me. You thought power was love, Emma said softly. Now you're learning the difference. In the background, crashing sounds erupted, a bottle breaking. A man, shouting. Lydia screamed. He's destroying everything. He said he's coming for you next. Daniel's eyes widened. We need to call security. Emma stayed silent, hand resting over her stomach. No, he's already destroyed himself. He just doesn't realize it yet. Hours later, the media swarmed outside Cole Innovations headquarters. Reporters shouted questions as John was escorted out in handcuffs, shouting and furious. This is a setup, he yelled. She did this. Emma ruined me. Flashes burst from every direction. Peter Cole, his father, shouted, John, stop, you did this to yourself. But Marla Cole sobbed, clinging to her son's arm. They took everything from us. Inside the office, investigators loaded boxes of files and computers, evidence of fraud, shell accounts, and false billing. The scene was chaos, his empire, once celebrated, now reduced to ashes. At Grant Industries, Emma watched the broadcast quietly. Public humiliation, Daniel said softly. The same way he humiliated you. Emma shook her head. No, this isn't revenge, it's karma. Karen Lewis entered with a file. Reporters are calling this poetic justice. Some are even calling you the woman who brought an empire to its knees. Emma smiled faintly. Then they're wrong. I didn't bring it down. I just stopped holding it up. The office grew silent. The rain had stopped, replaced by sunlight spilling through the windows a new dawn. But the peace didn't last. A knock came at the door. A courier entered, handing Emma a thick envelope. "Urgent delivery, ma'am, from a private sender." She opened it and froze. Inside were photos of her late mother, Walter, and an unknown man shaking hands over documents marked Helena Legacy Transfer Confidential. Daniel frowned. "What is that?" Emma's voice trembled slightly. "It's a deal my mother signed before she died. And this man, I've seen him before." Daniel asked, "Who is he?" Emma looked up, eyes dark with realization. "My biological father." The letter beneath the photo read, "It's time you know what she hid to protect you." The storm that had ended for John was just beginning for her. "It's time you know what she hid to protect you." The thunder roared again, though the sky was clear. Emma Cole stood frozen, staring at the old photographs scattered across her desk. Her mother, Helena Grant, smiling beside Walter Grant and a man she'd never met. A man whose features looked painfully familiar. Daniel Price leaned over her shoulder. "Are you sure you've never seen him before?" Her voice cracked. "No, but now I know why my mother kept certain doors locked." The air in the office thickened. Karen Lewis entered with trembling hands, carrying a yellowed envelope she'd found among Helena's archives. It was sealed under her name. She said quietly, "I think you should read it." Emma opened it slowly. Inside was a single page written in her mother's delicate script. "My dearest Emma, if this letter reaches you, then truth has finally found its time. The man you see beside me is Edward Blake, your biological father. We hid his name to protect you from a war of greed. He once helped me build Grant Industries before corruption destroyed him. I feared he'd come back for you one day." Emma whispered the name aloud. "Edward Blake." Daniel frowned. "That name sounds familiar." Karen gasped. "Blake Enterprises, the company that just bought half of Cole Innovations after John's arrest." Emma's pulse quickened. "You mean he's back?" Daniel nodded grimly. "And if he's consolidating power, it means this isn't over. He might be coming for your shares." The elevator chimed suddenly, echoing through the silent floor. All three turned toward the glass doors as they slid open. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out, calm, commanding, eyes the same, shade of storm gray as Emma's. "Miss Cole," he said smoothly. "Or should I say, Miss Blake?" Emma's breath hitched. "You." He raised a hand, almost fatherly. "Please, let's not make this dramatic. I've watched you rise. You've done what your mother could not." Daniel stepped forward protectively. "What do you want from her?" Edward smiled faintly. "What any father wants. To finish what his family started, and to keep outsiders from destroying our legacy." Emma's tone hardened. "Our legacy doesn't belong to you," he smirked. "That's what your mother said before she lost everything to me once." The words cut like glass. Karen whispered, "Emma, this man, he's dangerous." Edward took a step closer. "Grant Industries was built on my foundation. You just inherited the illusion of control." Emma's composure didn't break. "Then you'll learn that illusions can own empires," Daniel whispered. "Emma, don't engage." But she did calmly, powerfully. "You've spent years hiding behind money, Edward. I spent years surviving without it. Let's see whose legacy stands taller." He smiled, admiring her defiance. "You are truly her daughter." He turned toward the door, pausing briefly. "I'll be in touch soon. There's a board meeting next week you'll want to attend." The doors closed behind him, leaving silence and tension hanging thick in the air. Emma's eyes lingered on the city below. "My fight wasn't ending," she whispered. "It was just changing names." Karen touched her shoulder gently. "What will you do?" Emma turned toward the window, her reflection glowing against the glass. "Prepare," she said softly. "Because the name Cole may have fallen, but Blake is just beginning." Outside, the city lights flickered, the beginning of a new war between blood and legacy. Because the name Cole may have fallen, but Blake is just beginning. The boardroom. Doors burst open like thunder striking marble. Emma Cole, now Blake, strode in, dressed in white, calm but commanding. The air inside was thick with tension and wealth. Around the long mahogany table sat the board of Grant Industries, their murmurs stopping the moment she appeared. At the far end stood Edward Blake, her newly revealed father, flanked by his legal team. His gray eyes gleamed, half pride, half warning. "You're late," he said smoothly. Emma placed her folder on the table. "I was finishing what my mother started." The board members exchanged wary glances. Daniel Price sat behind her, papers in hand. "We have new filings," he whispered. "Proof that Edward transferred Grant Industries' assets through shell companies after Helena's death." Emma nodded once, then spoke clearly for the room. "My mother's legacy was stolen, and tonight, it returns home." Edward chuckled, the sound low and sharp. "You think this is about legacy? This is about control. You've inherited her blood but not her power." Emma's eyes didn't waver. "Then let's put it to a vote." The tension broke like glass. Board members shifted, whispering, uncertain. Karen Lewis, present as a moral observer and minority shareholder, whispered to Daniel, "He doesn't see it, she's already won their hearts." Edward leaned forward, voice dark. "You've got courage, I'll give you that. But courage doesn't win wars." Emma's voice was quiet, yet it cut through the room like wind through glass. "Neither does fear." Marcus Bennett, one of Edward's allies, rose. "The company needs stability. We all know Mr. Blake rebuilt it from ashes. Without him, there'd be no Grant Industries left." Emma turned to him calmly. "Then explain the missing funds from those ashes. $37 million. Buried in offshore accounts linked to your name." The room gasped. Marcus froze, words dying in his throat. Daniel slid the proof across the crope table. Edward's eyes darkened. "You've been busy." Emma met his stare. "I learned from the best manipulator in the room." He smirked. "Then maybe you're finally my daughter." Her voice softened, trembling with emotion. "No, I'm my mother's." The room fell silent. Miss Clara Dunn, freshly reinstated after clearing her name, entered with Judge Harold Myers beside her. "Mr. Blake," the judge said firmly, "you've been under investigation for months. A new court order freezes your holdings until we determine rightful ownership." Edward's calm mask cracked. "You went to court behind my back?" Emma nodded. "I went to justice behind your shadow." The judge handed her a document. "By temporary ruling, Miss Blake is recognized as acting CEO." The board erupted in applause, reporters outside pressing against the glass walls. Edward stood motionless, pride flickering into fury. "You have no idea what you've unleashed," he said darkly. "I built this empire, and I can bury it." Emma stepped closer, voice steady. "Then you'll be the one digging." Edward smirked again, eyes narrowing. "You think you've beaten me? You've just inherited my enemies." The room went silent again. Daniel whispered, "What does he mean?" Emma didn't answer. She looked out the glass wall at the city skyline, where distant sirens echoed under the fading sun. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman reborn through fire, standing on the edge of another storm. She whispered, "Then let them come. You've just inherited my enemies." The city roared with chaos that morning. Breaking news. Edward Blake under arrest for corporate espionage and financial extortion. Temporary CEO, Emma Blake, announces major restructuring at Grant Industries. Reporters swarmed the company gates as Emma Blake stepped out of a black car, dressed in pale blue, a symbol of calm after the storm. Daniel Price, Karen Lewis, and Miss Clara Dunn followed close behind. "Ma'am," shouted a reporter, "what happens now that you've taken control?" Emma paused at the microphone, the wind brushing her hair gently. Her voice was soft, but every word carried weight. "What happens now?" she said. "Now, we rebuild not just a company, but a conscience." The cameras clicked endlessly. Behind her, the glass tower reflected the morning sun. Grant Industries reborn under her leadership. Inside the atrium, employees gathered in silence. Many had once whispered that she was unfit, too soft, too broken. Now, their eyes were filled with something new: respect. Emma took the stage, her hand resting on the podium. Some of you knew me when I was called Emma Cole. Some of you remember the scandal, the humiliation, the betrayal. But I want you to remember something else. Truth always finds its way home. Applause rose like a wave. Karen Lewis wiped tears discreetly, whispering, "She turned pain into power." Daniel nodded. "And power into purpose," Emma continued. "We will rename our outreach branch after my late mother, the Helena Foundation. It will support women abandoned, silenced, and forgotten, the ones who were told they were worthless." The crowd erupted in cheers. Miss Clara Dunn, humbled and redeemed, approached her afterward. "Emma, thank you for giving me a second chance." Emma smiled gently. "Everyone deserves one if they choose to be better." Hours later, Emma walked alone to the rooftop terrace overlooking the skyline. The evening light wrapped the city in gold. Daniel joined her quietly. "It's over," he said. "You've cleared every debt, silenced every enemy." Emma shook her head. "No, Daniel, it's not over. It's beginning." He smiled faintly. "You sound like Walter again." She looked toward the horizon. He believed wealth wasn't meant to be kept, it was meant to lift others. Karen stepped out from the doorway, holding a newborn. Wrapped in white cloth, the baby Emma had carried through every battle. "Your son's awake," she said softly. Emma took the child in her arms, tears glistening. "For him," she whispered. "For every woman who thought the end was the end, when it was really just a beginning." The wind carried her words over the same city that once judged her, now chanting her name on billboards and news feeds. Below, the sign on the new foundation glowed in soft light. "The Helena Foundation, grace to rise, grace to give." Daniel looked at her, voice low. "You turned ashes into light." Emma smiled. "Even ashes can grow something new." The camera panned upward, the skyline shimmering like rebirth. And just as the screen faded to gold, a phone on the table buzzed. A single message appeared. "Miss Blake, there's someone asking to meet. He says he knew Walter Grant, and he has something Helena never revealed." Emma turned toward the city once more, whispering, "Then the light still has work to do. Then the light still has work to do."